Hey guys, Drifter here. Welcome to World War II in Depth. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about supply drop stats. On this show, I usually talk about weapons and perks and niche abilities and attachments and damage, range, recoil, something like that. But today, I want to take a look at the microtransaction system that's in place in Call of Duty World War II. By the end of the episode, I will tell you exactly what the drop rates are for the different rarities: epic, common, rare, legendary, heroic. I'm going to discuss how often an individual item drops, most specifically the weapons, because I know that's what most of you are looking for, how much it costs to unlock a new weapon in real world dollars, and how many drops you should expect to open in order to unlock a new weapon. Our sample today is 288 rare supply drops, which comes out to 864 total items, and I tried very hard to keep the social score at 8 for the entirety of this opening. However, that did change as I went through, but it moved from 8 to 9 on both of the openings, so it was consistent in that regard. I opened up 100 rare supply drops of my own, and I used Noah J456's 188 rare supply drop opening video for the other 188, of course. I don't like spending money on supply drops. I don't like microtransactions. I've been advocating against this for almost 4 years now, but there's just nothing I can do about it, and ultimately this is a business investment for me, not only for this video, but for 2 other ones that I've got coming up on different topics. And I very badly needed a control variable to test out social score, which is coming in the next episode, because that's a whole different can of worms. I don't want to get in that today, but I needed a nice scientific control variable. Now that we've got all these qualifications out of the way, let's actually talk about what happened. So after tallying, totaling, and making this nice little pie chart, the supply drop rarity looks like this, with about 41% on common, 34% on rare, 12% on legendary, 11% on epic, and 2% on heroic. If you prefer a tabled form, it's right there on the screen. Of note, there was very little difference between that 12 and 11 on legendary and epic. I think it was 1 item difference, if I'm not mistaken. Very, very narrow margin right there. And it's more or less what you would expect with any supply drop system. The more valuable something is, the less there is of it, starting with common, which you're pretty much drowning in, going to heroic, which you don't see very often. But the question you want to ask me is, what are the odds of getting an epic, legendary, heroic blank item in a single supply drop? Well, you got to remember that each supply drop opens up 3 different items, so you have to do slightly different math to get these numbers. But the odds of pulling an epic item out of one single supply drop is 29%, close to a third, which isn't bad. And the odds of getting a heroic item in a single supply drop is about 6%, which is roughly in line with what you would expect with really rare items. Now, rarity is one thing, but I know what most of you are interested in are the items in particular. So when we did the same thing, this is the graph for the supply drop items. As you can see here, grips and calling cards are roughly equivalent to each other at 28%. I did get a few more grips than calling cards, but not a statistically significant number. There's 16% emotes, which are the next most common. Almost the same as emotes is bonus, and by bonus that means bonus experience, bonus division experience, bonus weapon experience. Any sort of bonus or XP boost goes into that category. And then roughly tied with each other at 6% and 6% are weapons and uniforms. And these, if I'm not mistaken, were identical. I got just as many uniforms as I did weapons, so they're kind of tied for rarest item in the game. If you prefer a list or a table instead of like a pie chart, here it is on the screen again. And this roughly makes sense, but you can kind of see that there's 3 categories of items. The grips and calling cards are kind of lumped together in the low value items. Emotes and bonus are the next tier, and weapons and uniforms are the highest tier. And I do find it a little strange how closely they clump together in percentages in brackets like that. There's definitely something intended there. That's not accidental. Moving along again, we can answer the same question. Okay, well, I want to get a weapon or a uniform in my supply drop. What are the odds that I get one of these in one supply drop? Well, for a uniform, it's 17%, or for a weapon, it's 17%. For both of them, it's about 1/3 or 32% if you want either or being the 2 highest value items. Everybody wants a weapon. Weapon variants are cool. They're the thing you see the most, you use the most. There's some people that like uniforms and like to collect them, and uniforms are essential for unlocking the collection reward weapons, so I do consider them a high value item as well. Moving along, I'm sure you want to know how much it costs to get a weapon in real world dollars. So the first step in that process is to figure out how much a supply drop costs. This is pretty easy because we're given all the information on the screen, and supply drops can cost from a flat $2 per drop all the way up to $1.54 depending on what increment you buy them in. The more bulk you buy, the cheaper they get up to a point. For this, I decided to go ahead and split the difference at the $40 amount. For $40, you get 5,000 CoD points, or about $1.66 per drop as a baseline. I think that's a good number because it meets right in the middle between the biggest and the smallest. It's just right there, and it's a nice 1.6. It's a very easy number to work with. You can insert the others if you don't like my math. But the estimated real money prices for the weapons that I got, or I'll say I and Noah got because I used his information as well. If we were a single person that spent that much money, together we would have paid $25 per heroic weapon variant, or $9 per any weapon variant. Now, any weapon variant does include those heroics as well. So if you didn't need the heroic, if you needed the busted weapons, the grimy ones, the oddball ones, it's about $9 per weapon. If you want the really rare, the shiny, the awesome, the heroic, the one and only two, something like that, it's about $25 per weapon, which is a little bit high for my personal taste. However, that's lower than it has been for other Call of Duty games in the past. This doesn't factor in depot credits because those are duplicate based, and the smaller items that you get that work your way up toward a collection. This $25 and $9 calculation is assuming that you only value the weapons and that literally every other item you unlock is completely worthless, but I don't think that's far from the truth for most players in the game. Now, these numbers are for bulk data. These are the numbers that apply when you're opening up hundreds of supply drops, and I need you to keep in mind that this does not mean that you can spend $25 and be guaranteed a heroic or variant, or $9 or any variant. That's just not how probability math works. And I know Activision's probably going to shit a brick about it, but the math that you have to do to this is essentially the same as gambling, because it is a gamble, it's a random opening, and you have to do gambling probability type math in order to determine values. So if you're looking for the percent odds of unlocking a heroic variant, you get about a 50-50 chance if you open 11 drops. If you want a 75% chance, you need to open 22 drops. And if you want a 90% chance of unlocking a heroic variant, that could take up to 37 drops. This is ultimately your gamble. This is depending on how much you want to spend. And the more you open, the more your amount spent per weapon will go toward that average of about $25. And the less you open, the more of a true gamble it is. That's the information as best as I understand it, the best that I can present it to you. And I'm going to be talking about social score later, and then another secret video that I'm currently working on an even bigger topic. But the money that I spent on supply drops is out there so that you can get the best information possible, so that you understand what you're buying, and so that I spend my money so that you don't have to. The last part of this video is going to be my opinion. It is not in depth. It is not inherently factual like the rest of it, but I do want to talk about it. And I'll start off with that I just really hate microtransactions in general. I think that they're bad for the consumer because very few consumers understand the true value of what they're buying or the mathematics behind it. They're designed in a way that is similar to a gambling system in the fact that you don't get a fixed reward for your money. And they play on your brain's endorphins. It's hype. It's exciting. You want to open that box. You want to try your chances. And I know that every company on the planet does psychological tests to design their boxes to have a certain look, to have a certain sound, to have a certain feel, a certain color, to make noises that make you happy when you get these things. It sort of plays on your subconscious as a consumer, on your human flaws and biases that you can't naturally overcome without a whole lot of training. Even beyond all of that, I just thought it was really crap that I buy a game and then I have to buy more stuff for my game. And I've come to accept DLC and that it funds the game's development as it goes through, or it's a cycle like a subscription. Microtransactions, in a sense, I know are designed to keep the servers running and keep the game afloat, like, say, Overwatch and PUBG, which I play a lot of both of them. They sell their game and that's it. They can't run the servers for 5 years off that initial sale. They need some additional money coming in. Call of Duty being different than them in that it sells a new game every single year and a DLC package every single year. And some years there have been direct, purchases in the game on top of this microtransaction system, which I think is a really bad thing. As much as I don't like this, as much as I think it's anti-consumer, it's 100% going to be the way of the future because it's already too late. You, the consumer, me, the YouTuber, if you want to blame me, that's fine. We, as a group of gamers, have decided that we're going to spend money on this. Somebody somewhere has spent enough money on this to justify it continually being in the game. And what will happen is that if a company chooses not to go microtransactions and they're public, they put themselves at risk of being bought out by another company. The best example I can make of this is EA and Activision. They're both publicly traded gaming companies. They're both huge companies. They both have big profit margins. They make a lot of money. They're well-respected, global, whatever. And let's say that tomorrow, because of the Star Wars Battlefront backlash, EA decides, you know what, no more microtransactions. We're going to sell our game at a flat price. We're going to lower our profit margins. We're going to be good guys. That's what we're going to do. And we'll just make a little bit less money, and that'll be okay because we're being good. Well, Activision can then decide, well, you know what, we're going to keep selling microtransactions and making money. And what'll happen is the EA stock price will decline over time and the Activision one will go up. And for those of you that aren't familiar with corporate buyouts or culture, Activision can quite literally just raise enough money to buy all the EA stock or a big enough portion of it and just own the company and just buy out the competition. It could be the other way around. Activision could quit doing microtransactions or anything that's really competitive, and they put themselves at the risk of slowly declining stock price and an eventual buyout from a competitor. So it's sort of keeping up with the Joneses, but you have to keep up with the Joneses' income, or you put yourself at risk of just getting bought out. A similar thing happened in the 2008 financial crisis with the subprime loans. There were a lot of banks that knew that subprime loans were not safe, stable, or really great investments. But their competition was doing it, and they were making money just hand over foot and just drowning in money. And even the good banks knew that if they didn't get on board with this money train and do this thing, then in time they just wouldn't be profitable and their stock price would tank and they would just get bought out. And that's the reality of doing business, and that's exactly what's going to happen in the gaming space because consumers spend money on it, gaming companies make more money, and to keep their stock price competitive they need to keep making that money. And it's not going to change bar any sort of major legislation or some sort of truly huge, earth-shattering, catastrophic event. And that's my opinion on it. We're just kind of stuck with these microtransactions. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out. If you want all the weapon stats for World War II in your pocket to go, then look no further than the Ultimate Utility app by Brass Monkey. It's available on iOS and Android. There are links in the description, or you can just search for it in the App Store.